Right now, someone is staring at a blank notes app, their mind filled with bars they'll never type out. Another person is sitting in their car, freestyling the music out of the Bluetooth, but never actually getting into a studio, convinced they'll never be real enough to turn the mic on. A teenager in the middle of the country is deleting verses from their phone because they're not from the right place. And the truth is, they all share the same invisible prison, one built from myths so powerful they can silence voices before they ever speak. In today's episode of How to Rap, we'll explain the truth about why most people will never succeed in rap isn't about talent or flow or even hustle. It's about 4 psychological traps so subtle most aspiring rappers never realize they're caught in them. Now, before we begin, if you clicked on this because you'd like to become a professional rapper yourself, click the first link in the video description to get discounted access to our 6-week amateur to artist program, where we'll teach you how to go from your bedroom to professional level artist in just 30 minutes a day. Check that down below if you're interested, but with that said, let's go on to step number 1. Alright, let's get straight to the point. The truth is, most people will never make it in rap because they believe rappers come from Mars. It's as simple as that. In other words, they look at successful artists and see aliens, beings from another world with special powers, special stories, and special passes that mere mortals could never obtain. I call this the Mars mentality, the deep-seated belief that to be a real rapper, you need to come from some mythical place that isn't here. It's that you need to be shot 9 times like 50 Cent, or have a traumatic childhood hating your mother like Eminem, or grow up in the projects like Jay-Z just to earn the right to pick up a mic. And this isn't just some random mindset problem, it's a systematic barrier that's been built up over decades of carefully crafted narratives. The industry has spent billions selling this story, and aspiring artists have bought it wholesale. Every biopic, every documentary, every carefully curated origin story has reinforced this idea that successful rappers aren't just talented, they're somehow anointed by the worst circumstances that they always rhyme their way out of. And the cost? Thousands of voices silenced before they ever speak, countless notebooks filled with bars that will never see the light of day, an entire generation of potential artists trapped in a holding pattern, waiting for qualifications they don't actually need. So if you're feeling this right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've got bars, you've got ideas, you've got something to say, but every time you think about stepping up to that mic, there's this voice in your head asking for credentials you don't have. But you're not from the streets, but you haven't struggled enough, but your story isn't dramatic enough. The truth is, the Mars mentality isn't just wrong, it's actively destructive. It's created this bizarre situation where people are actually waiting to be qualified enough to create art. Think about how absurd that is. Imagine telling a painter they need to have survived a specific type of trauma before they can pick up a brush. Imagine telling a guitarist they need to be from a certain neighborhood before they can play their first chord. Long story short, here's the truth that shatters the whole illusion. Every great rapper you've ever heard of is from Earth. Kendrick Lamar, Earth. Shady, Earth. Jay-Z, Earth. They didn't succeed because of their background. They succeeded because they refused to let their background define their limits. They weren't waiting for permission from Mars, but here's the real kicker. This mentality isn't just a creative block, it's a convenient shield. Because if you never start because you're not qualified, you never have to face the possibility of failure. It's the perfect excuse wrapped in a blanket of false authenticity. The first step to breaking free from this trap is recognizing it for what it is, a myth designed to keep people from even trying. The only real qualification for being a rapper is having something to say and the courage to say it. Everything else is just marketing. The second biggest killer of rap careers isn't a lack of talent or bad beats, it's the biography prison, as we'll call it. It's this invisible cell that aspiring artists build around themselves brick by brick with every comparison they make between their life story and someone else's. Here's what the biography prison looks like in action. A talented artist sits down to write, but instead of focusing on their bars, they're mentally scrolling through their life experiences, trying to stack them up against their favorite rapper's Wikipedia page. They're doing this constant mental math, trying to calculate if their struggles add up to enough street cred to justify picking up the mic. It's like there's this imaginary trauma scorecard floating around in hip-hop, and everyone's convinced they need to hit some magic number before they're allowed to speak their truth. Got evicted once? That's 5 points. Parents divorced? 3 points. Never been to jail? -10 points. Grew up in the suburbs? Game over apparently. The reality, this obsession with biographical credentials is killing authentic voices before they even have a chance to develop. While artists are sitting around waiting to accumulate enough life hardships to qualify for their rap license, their actual stories, the ones that could connect with listeners on a real level, are going untold. Think about what we're really losing here. How many unique perspectives never make it to the mic because someone decided their life wasn't hard enough to warrant expression? How many potential classics never get written because someone convinced themselves they needed more struggle in their backstory? Here's the part that really exposes the absurdity of the biography prison. Some of the most successful artists in hip-hop history have actively fabricated or exaggerated their backgrounds. They understood something crucial that most aspiring rappers miss. It's not about where you're from, it's about where you can take people with your art. The biography prison works because it feels like authenticity. It masquerades as keeping it real, but there's nothing authentic about silence. There's nothing real about waiting for your life to become something it isn't before you start creating. The escape from the biography prison starts with a simple realization. Your story is already enough. Not because it's tragic enough or street enough or dramatic enough, but because it's yours. The only person keeping score of your life experiences is you, and you're using a scoring system that doesn't actually exist. The third big thing is the fact that there's a myth-killing rap dreams all across the globe, and it's drawn in the lines of a map. We'll call this one the geographic excuse, and it's probably the most widespread form of self-sabotage in hip-hop culture today. The geographic excuse works like this. Aspiring rappers everywhere are sitting on their talent because they believe success in hip-hop is tied to GPS coordinates. They're convinced that unless they're from New York, Atlanta, Louisiana, Chicago, or whatever city is hot right now, they don't have a legitimate claim to the culture. Let's put this in perspective. Right now, there's probably someone in Ohio convinced they can't rap because they're not from Atlanta. There's someone in Atlanta thinking they can't make it because they're not from LA. There's someone in LA sure they missed their shot because they're not from Chicago. And in each of these cities, there are people convinced they're not from the right neighborhood in that city. It's a perfect circle of self-defeat, and it's complete nonsense. Here's the reality check. Hip-hop has gone global. Some of the most innovative rap music right now is coming from London, Toronto, Sydney, Seoul, places that would have been considered hip-hop dead zones 20 years ago. The internet killed the geography game, but nobody seems to have gotten the memo. Think about the absurdity of this mindset in 2024. We're living in an age where the biggest hits are being recorded in bedroom studios, where international collaborations happen over Discord, where an artist can build a global fan base without ever leaving their hometown. Yet people are still waiting for their zip code to give them permission to create. The geographic excuse persists because it feels legitimate. It feels like you're respecting the culture by acknowledging its roots, but here's what's actually happening. You're confusing the history of hip-hop with its future. Yes, hip-hop was born in the Bronx. Yes, certain cities have played crucial roles in its evolution, but limiting its future to specific locations is like saying you can only make rock music if you're from Liverpool. Let's talk about J. Cole for a second. Fayetteville, North Carolina wasn't exactly considered a hip-hop mecca, but instead of using that as an excuse, Cole used it as fuel. He turned his location into part of his story rather than letting it be a barrier to his success. Here's the truth that kills the geographic excuse. Your location isn't your limitation. It's part of your unique perspective. The world doesn't need another rapper pretending to be from somewhere else. It needs someone to put their actual coordinates on the map. The next time you catch yourself thinking you can't make it because of where you're from, remember this. Hip-hop was never about where you're from. It was about having the courage to represent where you're from, wherever that might be. Your city is waiting for its voice. Why are you convinced it can't be yours? And last, let's talk about one of the deadliest traps in hip-hop, one that's so subtle most people don't even realize they're caught in it. I call it the permission paradox, and it's killing more rap careers than bad beats and weak bars combined. Here's how the permission paradox works. Aspiring rappers are waiting for permission to be rappers. Rewind and listen that again because it's exactly as ridiculous as it sounds. They're waiting for some invisible authority to tap them on the shoulder and say, "Congratulations, you're now officially qualified to express yourself." The permission paradox shows up in 1,000 different ways. It's in the way people preface their bars with, "I'm not really a rapper," but it's in the endless nights spent rewriting verses that never leave the notebook. It's in the constant need for validation before creation. Let me just take one more workshop. Let me just study one more classic album. Let me just wait until my flow is perfect. This obsession with permission creates a perfect trap. You can't become qualified without putting in the work, but you won't put in the work because you don't feel qualified. It's a closed loop of perpetual preparation that never leads to actual creation. Want to know the secret that successful rappers figured out? There is no permission slip. There never was. Nobody is coming to authorize your artistic expression. The gatekeepers you're waiting for don't exist, and if they did, they'd be looking for people who already started without their permission. Think about your favorite rapper's first tape. Was it perfect? Of course not. Did they have everything figured out? Not even close. But here's what they did have: the audacity to start before they felt ready. They understood something crucial that most people miss. You don't become a rapper by waiting to become one. You become a rapper by rapping. The permission paradox is especially dangerous because it feels responsible. It feels like you're paying your dues or respecting the craft. But let's be real. How does staying silent respect a culture built on speaking up? How does waiting for permission honor an art form that was created by people who specifically didn't ask for it? Here's the brutal truth. Every second you spend waiting for permission is a second someone else is spending finding their voice. While you're wondering if you're ready to start, someone else is already on their third project. They're not more qualified than you. They just understood that the qualification comes from doing the work, not waiting to do it. The escape from the permission paradox is simple, but it isn't easy. You have to give yourself permission. Not once, not in some grand declaration, but every single day. Every time you pick up the pen, every time you step to the mic, every time that voice in your head starts asking for credentials you don't have. Because here's the real secret: permission isn't given, it's taken. And it's time for you to take yours. With that said, hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to check out that first link in the video description to get your course. I've been your host for How to Rap, and thanks again for joining us. Peace.